Okay, so we'll discuss some Minyani Spheres or Omer. Maybe tonight we'll discuss the question, not an uncommon question, because anyone who was born between Pesach and Shavuos, this question comes up every year. Is the famous question, the Minchas Chinuch is one of the first to ask it, but many discuss it. A child who becomes Bar Mitzvah in the middle of Spheres Omer, and perhaps the question is also a Bas Mitzvah. That would hinge on the question, maybe we'll get to tonight, maybe we won't, whether women are obligated in the midst of Spheres Omer. So we'll just keep it right now for a man, and perhaps it applies to a girl as well. But the question is, someone becomes Bar Mitzvah in the middle of Sphira, can they continue counting with a bracha? In other words, what's the issue? Like, why yes, why no? So let's just make a couple of assumptions here. If we assume it's 49, again, one assumption is the Katan's counting while he's a Katan. Like, let's say on day 13, he becomes 13. So the assumption of the question is, he's been counting every day, or else he's no better than a Gadol who misses, which we're getting, which again the bottom line is if a Gadol misses a full day, so again it's a whole share on that, but the bottom line is you can't count with the meaning is you don't count with the bracha anymore. You just count without a bracha. So obviously we're talking about a Katan who counting, or else there's nothing. The number one assumption is the Katan's been counting all those days while he's a Katan. And secondly, there's another dispute perhaps whether Spheres Omer is 49 mitzvahs or one big mitzvah. So if we assume it's 49 separate mitzvahs, then there's nothing to discuss, so why not? If he's been counting, let's assume he's been counting every day as a Katan, so even though he's not obligated in Torah until now, so we'll assume that if it's 49 separate mitzvahs, there's much more to talk about. If it's one big mitzvah, so then the question is, you need tamimus, you need the full count. So the question is, those first 12, 13 days he's counted were only b'Torah Chinuch. He was doing it to prepare himself for the mitzvah. So basically what it comes down to, the question is, the way the Minchas Chinuch learns it anyway, the different ways. We'll see if we have time, we'll go into what the Reb Soloveitchik has to say. The issue is, if a person does a mitzvah during the state of exemption, right now I'm exempt from something, but I do it anyway, and later on I become obligated, does the mitzvah I did when I was exempt, does that count later on when I was become obligated? So in other words, a Katan, right now he's Minat Torah, he's exempt from everything. So but I counted anyway. So I turned 13, I'm already on day 14, so I can't just start counting in the middle. So if I didn't count anything up to now, that's it, I can't make a bracha anymore. But let's say I counted the first 13 days as a Katan, so I was exempt. So the question is, when I did that mitzvah in the state of exemption, could that count to enable me now to continue on and continue the regular? So that's the issue that seems to be at hand we have to discuss. So we have to go take a trip throughout Shas, throughout the Gemaras, and try to see if we can find the principle to prove or disprove it. So the first Gemara will be in Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, I think Chavav, Zayin, the Gemara is talking about matzah. We just celebrated Pesach not that long ago. And the question is like this. Let's say, for our purposes, I'll make the case simple. Someone is temporarily insane. In real life, it doesn't work that easy. But he's temporarily insane. So for our purposes, we'll say during 8 to 9 p.m. he was insane. And from 9 to 10 he became sane again. Let's assume that for our argument. So it's the night of Pesach, he has a mitzvah to eat matzah. So he eats his kezayis of matzah between the time period of 8 and 9. When he was a shota, when a shota is exempt from mitzvahs. And now it's 9:01. So the question is now, does he have to eat another piece of matzah? Do I say the matzah he ate while he was in a state of shota, but he was in a state of insanity, does that count? Or do I have to eat another piece of matzah now? So that's the Gemara Shaila. Then the Rambam, the Gemara seems to conclude that he's obligated to eat another piece of matzah. So we see from this Gemara that a mitzvah done during the state of exemption doesn't count, because the kazayis of matzah you ate when you were exempt does not count later on when you became obligated. So from this Gemara, if this is the only Gemara we knew, what would we conclude in our Sphira question? A katan that became bar mitzvah in the middle of Sphira, does this counting count or not? No, so at first glance it seems to be a wouldn't count. When the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, this would seem to say a katan, anyone born during the time of Pesach and Shavuos, they could never count Sphira with the bracha, at least the year of the bar mitzvah. However, there's another Gemara that seems to show the opposite. The Gemara tells us in Yavamas, a famous Gemara, Machlokes Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, there's a Gemara, the halacha of Pru Ravu, of having children. And again, discussion, Machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, but we paskin halacha l'maitza, to fulfill your mitzvah of Pru Ravu, you have to have a boy and a girl. Of course, let me point out that it's obviously a mitzvah out of your control. You can't control, at least not yet, maybe with modern technology, maybe they're working on it. And the question is whether it's a good thing or not, but that's not for now. But the point is, you have to have so probably the mitzvah is to be osik, and you can't control it as a boy or girl. And obviously if you don't have it, it's not like not putting on tefillin in the morning, that's in your control. But whatever the issues are, it doesn't make a difference. The halakha is you need a boy and a girl. So the Gemara has an interesting question. A ger sheneskayer, a convert, converts to Judaism, and he already had a boy and a girl when he was a guy, and now he converts to Judaism. He's Jewish now. Does he have to have another boy and a girl? Or do I say the boy and a girl he had while he was a guy, that counts? And so it seems to be the same issue. A guy is exempt from Pru Ravu. In fact, it's a discussion, the Gemara Sanhedrin, that maybe in terms of we assume a guy is chayav in another mitzvah, a mitzvah in Yeshaya, that God created the world not to leave it barren, and therefore everyone, even non-Jews, have an obligation to populate the world. But in terms of the technical mitzvah of Pru, like Shabbos, you have one kid, you fulfill your mitzvah. You have 10 girls, you fulfill your mitzvah. Pru Ravu is a much more legal, technical point. It applies only to Jews. So a guy is exempt from Pru Ravu. So the question is, now he's a Jew, so the question is, a mitzvah he did during the state of exemption will count later on. So that's a machlokes Reish Lakish Rav Yochanan. Reish Lakish says, no, he has to have more kids. And Rav Yochanan says, yes, he's yotzei his mitzvah. And it's a whole discussion. It's within Rav Yochanan, who says, yes, you fulfilled your mitzvah. There's a further discussion among the later commentators within Rav Yochanan. Do the kids also have to convert? Does Rav Yochanan say you fulfill your mitzvah even if the kids stay Goyim? Or that gets into another fundamental question in terms of perhaps the mitzvah of Pru Ravu changed. And maybe originally at one point, maybe Kodem Matan Torah, Goyim were chayav in Pru Ravu. In other words, maybe the mitzvah originally was to populate the world. And later on, at Matan Torah, the mitzvah changed to populate the Jewish world. So that's a further discussion. That we'll leave, but within Rav Yochanan, there's a further discussion on that point. But we passing like Rav Yochanan, that a guy fulfills his mitzvah, a ger, fulfills his mitzvah of Pru Ravu, he has to have more kids. So we see from this Gemara, a mitzvah done during a state of exemption does count. If this is true then a katan should be able to continue counting with the bracha. So that's what we have. So we have an apparent contradiction within the two Gemaras. In the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah we see an act done during the state of exemption does not count. And in the Gemara in Yevamos, we see that an act done in a state of exemption, the guy with Pruvu does count. So how we reconcile these two Gemaras is going to have tremendous ramifications to our question. So the two ways of attacking this Shaila, to come to an answer, I'm just in general lumdis, how do you deal when you have an apparent contradiction like this? So there's two ways to try to resolve it. Is either you could attack the nature of the mitzvah, in other words, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah is talking about matzah, the Gemara in Yevamos is talking about Pru. So maybe we could find some distinction between matzah and Pru and come up with an answer. That'll be one approach we'll have to take. Or the other approach is attacking the people. The Gemara is talking, Rosh Hashanah is talking about a shota, someone who's temporary insane. The Gemara in Yevamos is talking about a non-Jew, normal person. He's just not kayav. So those would be the two different approaches, and perhaps we'll see what we come up with. So the Minchas China, his approach is the difference between the mitzvah of matzah versus the mitzvah of Pru. That's the approach the Minchas China is going to take. So he says as follows. He says the mitzvah of matzah, we know. The mitzvah of matzah is the erev tochu matzos. You have a mitzvah to do the matzah. So what's doing the matzah? Taking the matzah in your mouth, chewing it, and swallowing it. There's a maisa mitzvah. The act is chewing. And when you swallow it, you get your mitzvah. So it's pretty clear when it comes to matzah. It's the maisa achila. It's the act of eating. That's the mitzvah. What's the mitzvah of Pru? Again, so the Minchas China will have his opinion, but that's not accepted by everyone. But the question by Pru, what is the mitzvah? The involvement in Pru, trying to have kids. In other words, we can't control what we have. We can't control that the woman gets pregnant, and we can't control what sex. But all we can do is osek in the act. If you do the act of bia with your wife with the intention of having kids, so that's all. Is that the mitzvah? Well, no. The mitzvah is result-oriented. In two, I have a boy or a girl. Again, it's not no fault of your own, but the bottom line is no one's blaming you. You're not going to get, there won't be an onish in Shamayim, but the bottom line is you didn't fulfill Pru if you didn't have a boy or a girl. So the Minchas China wanted to develop a whole yisod that the mitzvah Pru is result-oriented. Because he quotes the Gemara in Yevamos that says, let's say a person had a boy and a girl, and then, let's say one passed away before he died. So the halacha is it's not good. In other words, you have to die, or when you leave this world, you have to have, it's not enough just to have the boy and girl, it has to outlive you. So we see from here, then obviously the mitzvah's result, because obviously you had the boy, and the Minchas China marshals a couple of different Gemaras to prove his point. He wants to claim it's result-oriented, and with this he explains a famous yisod. We have a principle of mitzvah haba ba'avera. The principle is you do a mitzvah. Let's say the classical case in the Gemara is it's sukkis, you need a lulav and esrog. The luck is you need lachem, lakachtem lachem. You have to have your own. Again, let me just point out here halacha. Doesn't mean you have to buy it. It means if I have it, and you ask me, I'll just say, here, this is yours for the next 30 seconds, you own it, and then you give it back to me. You don't have to actually buy it in terms of halachically, but obviously it's good to have your own, but as long as you own yours, it's okay. So the halacha is, let's say you steal someone's lulav and esrog. So besides violating the avera of geneva, gezela, of stealing, besides being a thief, you also don't get the mitzvah, so it doesn't pay. Crime doesn't pay in that case. Because the halacha doesn't recognize any fulfillment of the mitzvah, because since you were involved in avera, it's a call of mitzvah haba ba'avera. Anytime you do a mitzvah through the means of an avera, the ends don't justify the means, and therefore it's no good. So the Minchas Chinuch quotes are Yerushalmi, which the Ramah actually quotes. What happens if someone has a kid with a mamzer? In other words, let's say you have one kid with your wife, let's say you have a boy with your wife, and then you commit adultery, and you have a girl with someone else. Whether the wife knows or not, that's irrelevant to this discussion. So you have a boy and a girl. So the question is, but adultery, that's it's a major avera. So the Ramah writes, the Yerushalmi says you get the mitzvah pru revu. Others disagree because they say mitzvah ba b'avera. So the question on the Ramah is, Yerushalmi, why don't we say mitzvah ba b'avera? We pass them like the Ramah. That again, this is post facto. Someone had some illicit relations, but the bottom line, they had a boy and a girl. So you get the mitzvah. The question is why? Why not say mitzvah ba b'avera? So that's what the Minchas Chinuch points out. He says as follows. He says there's a Yerushalmi, another Yerushalmi, but the Gemara talks about two different cases. The Gemara says, let's say, let's get back to Pesach. You steal the matzah, and you see shmur matzah hanging out there. You steal the matzah, and you use it for your night of Pesach. Is it good or not? So the Gemara says, no, it's a mitzvah ba b'avera. What about similar case? It's Shabbos, it's Pesach, no Erev, and the box of matzahs is in a Rishus HaRabim, a public place. You take the box of matzahs in a place you're not allowed to carry, and you bring it into your home and you eat those matzahs. You get the mitzvah. So the answer is yes. The question is, what's the difference? How come when it comes to the stolen matzah, I say mitzvah haba b'avera, and I don't get the mitzvah? But when it comes to the matzahs in a public place where I'm machal Shabbos to eat my matzahs, it's okay. So the Minchas Chinuch says, he says, when do we apply the principle of mitzvah haba b'avera? If at the time you're fulfilling the mitzvah, you're involved in the Avera. At the moment you're fulfilling the mitzvah, you're still involved in Avera. So, i.e., I'm eating, the matzah is stolen. So, while I'm eating the matzah is screaming, don't eat me, I'm stolen. And while you're actually eating it, the Avera, it's the Hashem, is a continuous, it's not the stolen in the moment, it's stolen until you return it. So this matzah is screaming, I'm stolen, you can't eat. So at the moment you fulfill the mitzvah, you're involved in the Avera. So then we say it's a no-go. Mitzvah haba b'avera. But the Minchas Chinuch says, what do you mean adultery? Not that he's downplaying adultery, but you did that 9 months ago. Right now you could be sitting in the base of Medrash learning, you could be watching TV, you could be reading a newspaper, you could be sleeping, and the woman has the baby. At the moment, to the Minchas Chinuch, you don't say mitzvah b'avera because the mitzvah is the result. If you hold it with the ma'isa bia, so then you can deal with then you can deal with mitzvah b'avera. At the moment I'm living with this woman, if that's the mitzvah of osek and pru revu, then we can deal with it. But the Minchas Chinuch says the mitzvah is result oriented, and therefore he says there's no problem of mitzvah. Again, he's not recommending adultery, but in terms of the legal question, do you fulfill your mitzvah of pru revu? The Minchas Chinuch says yes, there's no mitzvah b'avera. So that's the yesod. You have a question?
Even if you commit adultery with the intention of fulfilling that mitzvah.
Yeah, but doesn't your intention, in other words, the intentions are relevant. In other words, if the mitzvah is the ma'isa bia with the intention of, so then it would be mitzvah b'avera. But the Minchas Chinuch saying that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the result. Obviously, in order to have the kids, you might have to have relations with someone. Maybe today, with modern technology, you might not, as we'll get into. But I'm saying is, but the normative fashion anyway is doing it like that. So therefore, he says the mitzvah is the result when the baby comes out of the mommy, and therefore he says you don't have, it's a technical, he's not condoning the adultery, it's a terrible thing you did, but in terms of, I can't take away his mitzvah pru revu from him, it doesn't fit into the legal category of mitzvah haba b'avera. That's what the Minchas Chinuch points out. So, so the Minchas Chinuch yesod is a fundamental difference between the mitzvah of matzah. See, the matzah is the achilas matzah, is the mitzvah, is the act of eating the matzah. It's not, like, in other words, if I could somehow, through intravenous, somehow melt the matzah, somehow get the matzah into my body, that's meaningless. It's not, the mitzvah is not to have matzah in my intestines. That's not, the mitzvah is hanas growth, the mitzvah is eating, in a normal way. So therefore we apply mitzvah ba'averi. The moment you're eating the matzah, the matzah is stolen. When it comes to pruruvu, it's result oriented. So therefore the mitzvah ba'averi, so that's what the Minchas Chinuch says. There's no contradiction between the sugya in Rosh Hashanah and the sugya in Yevamos. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah was talking about matzah, the person who was temporarily insane, he ate the matzah between 8 and 9, and the question was, so we said he has to eat another piece of matzah at 9. So we see from here, if you do a mitzvah in the state of exemption, it's a no-go. Yeah, we see the Gemara in Yevamos with pruruvu that the guy doesn't have to have more kids. So how do we reconcile? So the Minchas Chinuch says, by matzah, the mitzvah is the ma'isa mitzvah. So once I swallow that matzah, I might be suffering. My stomach might be in other ways for the next couple of days or hours, but nothing to do with the mitzvah. The mitzvah is over. Once I swallow that matzah, my mitzvah is over. So let's say I ate the matzah at 8:20. 8:21, it's finished. I have nothing left to show. So comes 9 o'clock. Okay, what matzah? No, it's not a result. You need a ma'isa mitzvah when you're chayav. Therefore, that's what the Gemara says. The Rambam writes, you have to eat a new piece of matzah. But when it comes to pruruvu, if it was the ma'isa bia, you're right. Then you'd have to be a Jew when you're osek in pruruvu. But if the mitzvah is the result, so what's the difference? When you had the kids, right now, there's one question. In fact, as I said, if you had your kids, they died, you don't get the mitzvah. One question, right now, do I have 2 kids that outlive me? The answer is yes, you fulfill the mitzvah of pruruvu. So that's why, so we say when it comes to a mitzvah which is result-oriented, so then we say a mitzvah done during the state of exemption does count because the kids are still here, so who cares I did it during the state of exemption? As long as they're here right now, they count. So the question is, where does Sfiras Omer fit in? What is the mitzvah of Sfiras Omer? Is it a ma'isa mitzvah or is it a result oriented? That actually could be a discussion, because some might argue maybe it's result. The purpose is to count up so we know when the Yantav Veshuas is, but that's not the way the Minchas Chinuch. When the Minchas Chinuch learns that the mitzvah of Sfir is compared to matzah, it's just the ma'isa of counting. I counted tonight's the night, and that's it, and that's it. Once the mitzvah is over, there's nothing left to show for it. So therefore, the Minchas Chinuch compares the mitzvah of Sfira to the mitzvah of matzah, not to the mitzvah of pruruvu, and hence the Minchas Chinuch, based on this, will conclude from the Minchas Chinuch that a katan can no longer, the counting he did while he's a katan does not count for later on, and therefore that year when he becomes bar mitzvah, he would have to continue counting without a bracha. He's allowed to count with a bracha while he's a katan, because that's chinuch, but he wouldn't be able to continue counting anymore. So that would be the conclusion of the Minchas Chinuch. This parenthetically, what I was talking about, the Minchas Chinuch, the result-oriented, that's a major nafkamina, halach l'maisa, artificial insemination. Perhaps maybe in vitro, other things, but the question is, what's the mitzvah? If the mitzvah is living with your wife and trying to have kids, so then, then obviously artificial insemination, then you might not get the mitzvah of pruruvu. But if the mitzvah is like the Minchas Chinuch saying is result-oriented, so then what's the difference how I got it? The bottom line is I developed the kid, so it's very halach l'maisa. In fact, that's why that's why the whole question of mitzvah strichas kavana. So if it's a ma'isa mitzvah, we assume you need kavana. But it's result oriented, you don't need kavana. The bottom line is if there's so therefore do you have to have kavana to have kids while you're doing the ma'isa bia? So if it's the ma'isa bia, then there's what to discuss. But according to the Minchas Chinuch, you don't need kavana. The bottom line, if You can have all the kavanah you want. If you don't produce the kids, it's, it's academic. Not that you're saying you shouldn't have kavanah, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite. Parenthetically reminded me of a shaila, interesting shaila about meal on Shabbos. We know the halacha is that we do a meal even on Shabbos. So we do a milah even if the 8th day is on Shabbos. Of course, if the child's not healthy, so we don't do a milah. What about, is there a case where you could give me where there's a healthy child and it's day 8 and you don't do the milah on Shabbos?
If it's also Chag.
If it's what?
Chag, if it's Sunday. And
no, but the halacha is Yantiv's the same. Yantiv's the same as Shabbos. Yantiv Sheni actually, is a discussion. We do a right. The question is the suffix mila bizmana, whether you do it on Yantiv Sheni or not. But either way, we'll get into that. But so the Gemara tells us a case. A C-section baby. Why do we discriminate against C-section babies? You cannot do a C-section baby on Shabbos. If the baby is born on Shabbos and day 8 is next Shabbos, you can't do. By the way, you only do a milah bismana on Shabbos. Anytime you push off a bris, so if it's day 9 or anything after, you never do it. The only time you can do it on Shabbos if it's day 8. So why don't we do a C-section on day 8? Because it's an interesting discussion in the Gemara about when is a C-section, when are you obligated, a C-section baby, a boy, when is he chayav in milah? Because what's the issue? Why shouldn't it be day 8? In fact, we just read last week, Isha kisazriya v'yalda zachar. The Torah tells us a woman gives birth, she has a boy, latama, she's tummy 7 days, and then it says v'yom hashmini yom asar laso. So the Gemara makes a juxtaposition in the Psukim. When is a milah obligated on day 8? That's only if a woman becomes tamei leida from the birth. But if the case where a woman gives birth without becoming tamei, so then perhaps there's no halacha of day 8. So the Gemara tells us, nida, a C-section baby the mommy does not become tamei. Today, practically speaking, it's not true. But api halacha, because the dam doesn't come out from the makom, and therefore, it's strictly speaking, not halacha l'maisa today, it's not true. But in theory, a C-section maybe the mother doesn't become tamei. So it's a machlokas in the Gemara whether you chayiv in a milah on a C-section day 1 or day 8. In fact, that's the Gemara. The Gemara says, what do you mean? A woman has to become tamei for it to be day 8. Doros Rishonim, the Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Lamed Hey. The Gemara says, Doros Rishonim Yochichu. What about Avraham Avinu? They did the bris on day 8. There was no concept of Tumah. There wasn't Matan Torah. So we see day 8's irrelevant. So the Gemara concludes that Nasna Torah v'nischadei shalacha. That might have been true Kodem Matan Torah. But once the Torah was given, Isha kisazriya v'yalda, that's halacha. So that's a machlokas in the Gemara whether a C-section baby is day 1 or day 8. Halach l'mais, it's a sveika dedina. So therefore we're not sure. So therefore we normally do it day 8. But if day 8 falls out on Shabbos, we don't do it because it's a suffix milah bismana. So we normally do it day 8 because if day 1's the day, so day 8 also works. But if day 8's the day you do it day 1, it's not good. So therefore we always wait to day 8. However, on Shabbos, well, maybe it's really day 1. So it's only a suffix milah bismana. The halacha is a suffix milah bismana. It does not docha Shabbos. Like a baby born ben hashmash, it's twilight Friday between sunset and nightfall. We do not do the bris on Shabbos because we're not sure. Maybe it was day 7. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's day 9 because maybe he was born on Friday. So a suffix milah bismana we don't do. That's why we don't do a C-section baby. So that's the Gemara. What's amazing is some achronim raise a tremendous shaila that there's a. What about bathhouse insemination? So we know in In vitro, that's something that's been around probably the last 40 years or so. Artificial insemination, I think that was in 1790 in London, was the first case. But what the point is, well after the Gemara didn't know about artificial insemination, the Gemara didn't know about in vitro. Yet the Gemara did know about bathhouse insemination. It's unbelievable. Gemara in Chagiga. The Gemara is talking about it's this week's, next week's Parsha Emor. But the Gemara talks about, we know a Kohen, he can't marry a grusha, he can't marry a divorcee, but and an almana and a Kohen Gadol but a Kohen can marry an almana, but a Kohen Gadol can't even marry an almana. You have to marry a virgin, a Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara has an interesting question: can he marry a pregnant virgin? It's an oxymoron. So what does it mean? So the Gemara gives a case where somehow, I guess a man went in, he had semen, whatever, and the woman came out pregnant from the bathhouse. In fact, there's a tradition that Ben Sira, that Yirmiyahu's daughter went into the bathhouse after Yirmiyahu, and she became pregnant. Ben Sira, they say Yirmiyahu was the father. So whether that's true and that doesn't make a difference. But the point is, we see the Gemara already entertains this possibility, whatever you want to call it, but the concept of becoming pregnant without actually having, relations. So that's the Gemara Shiloh there. So Rabbi Hananel has a different manuscript apparently. He says, you know what? If he wants to know a child who's conceived through bathhouse insemination. So the question is, he wants to know, can you do the bris milah on Shabbos? Someone who's born miraculously or unnaturally, because why? Because he says he wants to say when it says Isha ki sadriya v'yalda zachar v'tam. So see, Rabbi Hananel says two reasons. The way he learns is the Gemara says over there, this person cannot have a milah on Shabbos because the woman doesn't become tamei leida. So Rabbi Hananel gives two possibilities. We don't have this manuscript, he does. He says, what's the pshat in that Gemara? Is it because it is a miraculous occurrence? Is that why the woman doesn't become tamei leida? Or no, because it was unnatural, meaning it wasn't the normal way of becoming. So Rav Shlomo, so it's a major nafkamina between the two, because Rav Shlomo Zalman says the nafkamina would be artificial insemination, or perhaps in vitro, or petri dish, however you want to do it. If the issue is miraculous, so maybe it's not miraculous. We know, science knows how it works. But it's clearly unnatural. It's not the normal way of having kids. So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Herschel Schechter, Rabbi Willard from YU, and Rav Black all agree with him that he goes with the second shot of Rabbeinu Hananel, that the issue is unnatural, and they say halacha l'maisa, if a baby that's born through artificial insemination or in vitro should not have a bris on Shabbos, because maybe the mother's not tamei leida, and therefore he's not chayav, and it's like a C-section. It's a bit kid. At least C-section, maybe the birth is different. Rabbi Hananel has a tremendous chiddush that if the conception is different, that plays a role. But he says it's a tremendous chiddush that he says it. And what's more amazing to me is the poskim accepted la halacha. Because the one we don't usually accept Rabbi Hananel. He's not usually one of the mainstream people in halacha. But Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Schechter, Rabbi, many of my Rebbeim, they all say one should not. And the Rabbi says it's no one's personal business. You don't have to tell, by the way, you know what, I did in vitro artificial. You don't have to tell anyone. You could tell them, he said you're allowed to tell a white, you could tell them the baby's jaundice, you could tell them it was a C-section, you don't have to tell no one else this is why. But you should just, I guess, well, if you're a mole, you should know the answer. If not, you should tell the mole, because that's something the mole usually asks. Avaji Yosef, I saw, brings down, he disagrees. He says you can't have the bris on Shabbos. That's a tremendous, halacha l'maisa thing with this modern technology. That's just on the side. Getting back here, now that was because the Mincha Sinach I brought up, and how he reconciled the difference between matzah and pru ravu. The Turi Evan has a different approach. He wants to attack the people. He says there's no contradiction between the two Gemaras. We saw the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says a mitzvah done during the state of exemption doesn't work. You have to eat another piece of matzah. But the Gemara in Yamamas says you don't have to have more kids, so how do you reconcile? So the Turi Evan says like this. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, we know we have a concept of mitzvah strichas kavana. Then it's a machlokas in the Gemara, different opinions in the Rambam, how you learn the Rambam, whether mitzvahs require intent or not. As of course I always like pointing out, like what kind of question is that? You mean there's some people who say, you know what? Is it still on, by the way?
It says recording.
Okay, because it usually goes off after 35 minutes. Then you just have to repress it. Okay, so we know there's a concept of. So I always point out. You mean this is someone who says, "I'm about to put on tefillin, don't have kavana." No one says that. The question is post facto. If I put on tefillin and I didn't have the requisite intent, do I have to put on my tefillin together? Is it good? So that's the machlokas in the Gemara. So the discussion how we paskin doesn't. So it's not relevant at the moment. We know there's a concept of mitzvahs require intent, mitzvahs ain't shrichas kavana. But the Turi Evan says, but here it's even worse. Here we're talking about a shota. He doesn't know what's going on. It's like a concept of misasik. You're totally insane at the moment. So really, the Torah says really a mitzvah done in the state of exemption would work. The reason why it doesn't work in Rosh Hashanah because the guy doesn't. You have to be aware what you're doing. The person doesn't even know what he doesn't even know that he ate matzah, so that's why it doesn't count. But the case of the guy with the kids, he knows what he's doing. He knew he was having kids, whether he knew he was going to convert later on, who cares? But the point, he knew he was trying to have kids with his wife. So therefore, he says, in that case, if you're aware of what's going on, so then we go with a mitzvah done during the state of exemption does work, and therefore, so based on the Turi evidence, we would conclude. So the katan, 12 and a half, 12 and 3/4. He knows I'm counting the sphera. So according to the Turi Evan, he'll be able to continue counting with a bracha. So it comes out. It seems to be an apparent contradiction between the Gemara and Yevamos. So to summarize, so we want to know a katan, a child that becomes bar mitzvah in the middle of sphera. Can he continue counting with the bracha? In other words, the issue is, can a mitzvah done during the state of exemption count for later on in the mitzvah? So we said, from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah by the matzah and the shota, we see it's a no-go. We have to eat another piece of matzah. From the ger who converts, we see it's a go. So how do you reconcile? So Minchas Chinuch says, the issue is matzah versus pru ravu. Pru ravu is result-oriented, so it works. Matzah is the ma'isa, mitzvah doesn't work. Sfiras Omer is like matzah, hence he says the katan can no longer continue with the bracha. And the Turi Evan says no, the issue is the shota versus the katan. The shota is not aware, he doesn't know what he's doing, so of course it can't help for later on. But a guy knows what he's doing, he's just not chayav, so therefore it's a count. So to a katan it's like a guy in that sense, and therefore it counts. So lachla ma'isa. So how do we paskin? So I think the minhag among Svardim, or at least Avadi Yosef says, that Avadi Yosef says, he goes, since it's a question among the Achronim, he goes, Safek brachos lahakel. He says the katan should continue counting, but without a bracha, because of the principle, do the mitzvah, when you're in doubt about the bracha, we're lenient. And the psak of Sri Pesach Frank and many other Achronim is, we assume that no, we assume that a katan can continue counting with the bracha, because by sphere the many different doubts, maybe it's 49 separate mitzvahs, and therefore the bottom line is, I think, the minhag is, maybe different places are minhagim, but the minhag ashra seems to be that a katan can continue counting with the bracha.